usually we're usually here at 8:59. We're letting everybody down by 2 minutes.
I know, it's bad. You gotta be on time.
Yeah.
Gotta be early,
How you
as
guys
they
doing
say.
today? Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday.
Another beautiful
Happy
Saturday.
we're not usually most people don't work on this day, but we are.
We do
This
every
is call it
Saturday.
work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do every day. Dude, I have to say the weather has been awesome though here. It's been really beautiful.
Oh yeah,
August turned out to be like a great month for some
been
reason.
a nice steamy 95 here still.
Oh,
Ooh.
it's been like
Hot and
70s and
humid.
like low 80s. Morning, Chris.
Morning, gentlemen. I
All
see
right.
Eddie O'Connor wrote in the group, if we miss the weekend live stream, is there somewhere to see it? If anybody's listening, there is. It's inside the Facebook group. It's in your news feed. You can scroll down through it, or you can go to the guides section at the top of the page and click through the guides and all the
And
um
it's also in
live
the
stream.
pinned content.
Yeah, and it's in the pinned
Yeah.
content. So like you pretty much, if you're on the page, you're gonna see it somewhere if you just scroll around a little bit.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I think
welcome,
you
good
can go to
morning.
media too. Can't you even access all of them there too?
Yep, I
Yeah.
think you can. Pretty much any button you press will take you there.
Yeah. It shouldn't be hard.
If only there was another way.
As long as a clearer button.
Chris said
Yeah.
it's 65 in North Carolina. Oh my God, that sounds nice.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
70 here. It's
I
nice.
want some of that.
The weather's been great, dude. But
North Carolina
the
got those mountains too, so
I don't know. The allergies have been
chilly
bad
with
though for some reason. But that's whatever. What are you gonna do?
yeah. Well, I've been doing a lot of coding this week. I've been working on our app, on the restaurant app, on another uh crypto app. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've been I think we should talk about that because in our private coaching group where we have private Zoom meetings with our students, we've been
Making it
doing some
sound
really cool
dirty.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
In our
it's only
private
for
Zoom
our
meetings
fans.
where we
It's
share
only for our
private.
fans. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only for our fans. Exactly.
Yeah.
Our private OnlyFans.
Yeah.
The
So
best way to do
anyways,
coding.
yeah. After we finish this, we meet up with a few select people who are actually interested in becoming real web developers like as soon as possible. And
Yeah.
so recently we've been working on a really awesome app together. Everybody's been creating their own components. Like this is crazy. This is the part that blows my mind is there are some people who like literally were just working with like HTML and CSS. And then
Mhm.
now all of a sudden they're in the most modern JavaScript frameworks, React, Next, building actual web apps that
Yeah.
can make money or be used in your portfolio to get you jobs. And that's
Yeah,
like,
totally.
that's what we're doing now.
And collaborating with other developers, learning how to use GitHub, doing everything that you would do for a real project. And I
Yeah.
think, dude, I was just saying to you guys before we got on here that like I would have killed if our boot camp had been set up this way. It would have been amazing.
Oh my God.
Oh
Yeah.
God. Like, and I think that's the beauty of it is we can offer like a real actual development experience instead of just like pretending to learn,
Yeah.
which is what they
It's
do.
funny. I was on the phone this week with an action call with somebody who took the same boot camp that we did, actually.
They must
And
have a really good job now.
no, in fact, no job at all. And she said like, I basically got nothing out of that, and now I'm stuck paying for it still. And that's what happens with a lot of boot camps, because it's really, a boot camp is the same as a Udemy course, which you can buy for $15, right? It's pretty much like, honestly, if you look at everything we did in our boot camp, it's pretty much just a Udemy course.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when we
There's,
did the sequel, the whole, what was it, a month on sequel, something like
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Learned nothing. And then I did a LinkedIn learning course and I learned more in that course in like 3 hours than I learned the whole entire month we were
yeah,
doing that stuff in New Camp.
yeah, it's crazy. And the reason why is that none of it is hands-on work. Like everything we
Nope.
did was just copy and paste this, just copy and paste this. And I was actually joking with her. I was like, yeah, how amazing was that website we built? And she was like, oh my God, like it was like from 1990. I
Yeah.
was like,
They're
yeah,
still building the same thing, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, totally. I mean, they haven't changed the curriculum at all, but
But that's just it though. It's just, you know what it is? It's just like colleges too, where like, look, you're only going to get out of it what you put in, and they don't
right.
care. They just want your money. That's
Right.
all it is. And so like you're not gonna get the kind of hands-on like actual like doing work like we do. It's like you're
Yeah.
actually learning to be a developer and like because ours is I think more akin to like, how it should be, which is like almost like apprenticing sort of something
Hmm.
like that, It's the coaching style that gets you actually where you
Coaching.
need to
It's
be.
like, I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to be a baseball player or a hockey player or a football player, you find a coach who can show you your weaknesses and your skills, right? And
Yeah.
the direction to go, like how to learn, what to do, right? You don't rely on like your own. Yes, people who are professional sports players know a lot about the sport. They understand what they should be learning, but they still need a coach to make them better, right?
Yeah.
Because a coach has an outside perspective, and that's, I think, the benefit that a lot of people don't realize with the program that we offer is that it's really about coaching people on software development. We're not trying to give you the knowledge necessarily. We're not teaching you the frameworks or the syntax necessarily. There is curriculum in there, but the idea is more of like, hey, this is something that you need to work on. These are the resources to use, and just guiding people in the direction.
Yeah.
And things like this are huge because in what other programs that you know of are people building real projects together from scratch, like without a plan,
Yeah.
Well,
without like,
Something
that's
that
the
we came up
coolest
with on
yeah,
our
thing
own. Yeah.
is like
yeah,
anyone in our coaching program can apply for a job, and at the interview they'll be asked, well, have you ever worked with teams? And be like, yeah, actually I've built apps from
yeah,
the ground up with teams using GitHub, doing all this
yeah,
different stuff, and they'll be blown away. They'll be like, okay, you're hired.
exactly. And
Yeah.
then you show them the project too, and they're like, wow, that's actually like meaningful. People would
Not
use
only show it
that.
to them, but you can explain what you did, what
Hmm.
challenges
Mhm.
we're run into because we do the whole thing together, and that's also a big part of it.
Yeah. So pretty cool. And that brings me to the point of today's video, which is why it's important to suck at coding.
Yeah,
And
it is.
I
Mhm.
mean, if there's one thing I can say about New Camp and the boot camp that we went to, it definitely helped us suck at coding. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
explain to me what you guys mean or what we mean
I
by
would
why is it important to suck at coding?
I think it was Les Brown or one of these motivational speakers. I once heard him say that anything worth getting good at or anything worth being good at is worth being bad at until you can develop the skill to be good.
Mm,
And that really stuck
Yeah,
with me because, everybody wants to be good. That's like the reason why we're doing it. I mean, people
yeah.
probably want to be a coder because they can make lots of money, they can have time and location freedom and all this other stuff, but essentially they want to be a good coder. But the thing is, in order to get there, you have to be a bad coder and you have to endure through being a bad coder.
but
Yeah.
I think this is also one of the downfalls of the way we've set up the way. This is why we see so much failure at education and boot camps, is because everything's been focused on the outcome, rather like getting that piece of paper as being the important thing, rather than actually what you learn through the process.
Hmm.
And I think that's why we find so much people giving up because they think they can't do it because they're like, well, I'm not just immediately, I got the paper and I can't do it, so I must be a failure. And it's like, no, you just need to put work in and you need to actually
Yeah.
do it because that's how you're going to learn it. And that's how you're going to like those. I mean, I can remember like all my major failures in coding are also the times where I learned the most. They're like the opportunities to
Yeah.
like, you have a good breakthrough and it feels good, when you finally do overcome that hurdle, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think that's super important because I've seen this a lot with the people inside the incubator also, which is a lot of them have been using like AI assistants inside their VS Code. So like they'll start typing and then AI will start to complete it. And like, one of the coaching tips that we've given people over and over is turn that off because it's great. You never make a mistake because it's always like giving you the correct answer. But one, it gets in the way. And two, it doesn't give you those teaching moments. Like you always just know what you should be writing. And so your brain is just, you can literally just start typing and tab over and it'll autocomplete everything. Your brain never gets that sort of like feedback loop of like, nope, that was wrong. It broke. How do I fix it? And then, yeah,
Chris
Chris,
said he turned it off.
turned that up. I know, Chris. I know
Yeah,
you turned it off, and so did Anthony. And that's the point, right? Is
yeah,
if
you
it
got
wasn't
you.
for being in the program and like having somebody to tell you that, you may have sat there and like continued to do that, and it's harming you more than it's helping you. In the end, like when you're I mean, not in the end, but
When you're
later
at your
on.
Google interview and they have the whiteboard interview, there's
Yeah.
no AI interface on that whiteboard
Yeah,
interview.
yeah. But like,
Like, so how do I access Gemini from here?
I think it makes sense. Yeah, I think it makes sense that when you're in a work environment where you're a developer and your job is just to put out as much code as possible, it makes a little bit more sense to put on one of those like AI assistants because you already know what you're coding and it's just helping you like not make those mistakes in the first place. But when you're learning, being wrong is very important. I mean, we talk to our students all the time about that too, is like you need to make mistakes because it's literally the time when you're going to learn the most.
Yeah, you're going to learn the most, but also it's also what coding's about. Coding is problem
Yeah.
solving. And guess what?
Yeah.
Every time you solve a problem, there's a new problem. And those problems
Yep.
are wide and varied and they don't go away. It's not like when you get better at coding, it's not like yeah, you don't run into the little problems like with setting up stuff and all, but you're still going to run into problems. You still have to make decisions about how to solve things. And like, yeah, you need to get comfortable with failure and breaking things so that, and I think, we've all seen this both with ourselves and with everybody in the group. Like, you hit this point where you just get comfortable breaking stuff because you realize you can fix
Yeah.
it. And that is like the
Yep.
coolest point when you're coding because that's when I think you like really realize like I can totally do this. And
Yeah.
like your mentality just changes. Um, the other thing too with AI is super helpful, but I think when you use it off of like outside of VS Code where you have to enter in a prompt,
Yeah.
physically, that is different because it means you're trying to work through the problem. Maybe it's been like 15, 20 minutes and you're like, all right, I need some assistance. So you get assistance, you can ask it for explanations, and then you can type in the stuff by hand again. You're still doing the
Yeah.
work that's going to help with that mental memory and that like, muscle memory of how to do these things.
Yeah. And it's always important to read through what you get from AI too, because a lot of the time it's not that great. It may not be the perfect answer. It might be part of the answer. And so you're sort of forced to read what it's giving you and how that fits into like your own code. So I agree with you. That's how I still use AI. I
Yeah.
refuse to turn on like AI assistants because also like what I've noticed a lot of is it's really good at assisting people, but a lot of times it's not giving you, it's sort of going off on a tangent, like it's not giving you exactly what fits into your app, and then you have to end up editing it anyway, which takes you more time than if you just wrote it out the first
Well,
way.
I told you, I think last time, like, I used it because I was trying to decide an approach that I wanted to take, and I knew there's
Mhm.
multiple approaches for everything. So I typed in an AI, and I was working with a database on a back end service, and then ChatGPT gives me a response, and the response would have required an additional call to the database, which, if you know anything, that
Mhm.
costs money and
Yeah.
resources that I didn't make. Now, it was helpful in the sense that it's failing to give me the right answer also helped me figure out the right answer that I wanted, which was
Yeah.
good. But that's usually what happens is like when you know the code, you realize that it's not going to give you the correct response every time. It gives very good responses. It's great at boilerplate stuff
Yeah.
and certain things it's really good at, but you still need to understand how to code in order to use it effectively and create good, solid work.
Yeah. I agree. I think one of the hardest things, go ahead, Randall. You want to add
Yeah,
something?
so, well, part of the issue with like being a bad programmer is that people just aren't patient.
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, you used to be patient. Like you would order something, it would take 4 to 6 weeks for shipping and handling or processing or whatever it was, and then it would
Processing.
arrive
Yeah,
in
I
the
forgot
mail.
about
Like
that.
stuff took forever. And someone once said that patience and time are the two strongest warriors. And Gary Vaynerchuk always talks about patience, like your impatience is killing you. And because for a long time, like successes didn't happen until you were well past 40 years old. Like Bill Gates was the first millionaire who was in his 40s. And then Zuck did it when he
Yeah.
was like 18 or something like that. And then ever since then, people are like, well, if I'm not a billionaire by the time I'm 16, my life's over. And
Yeah.
it's
Pretty
just like,
much.
yeah, like our impatience is killing us. And this is like the issue of being a bad programmer is like how long can you be patient as a bad programmer? Because
Mm,
it guaranteed every single good programmer was just patient with being a bad programmer. Because it's just
yeah.
gonna, as long as you stick with it and you just try and improve, you're going
Yeah.
to eventually improve and get to be a good programmer. But it's just the people who are bad programmers or who are not programmers are just people who quit or who don't improve.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what I love about programming too, is it is first and foremost a skill. It is something that you can acquire by doing it and learning. And yes, it takes you do need to learn some stuff about how things work and everything, obviously. But at the bottom line, it's a skill and you can get good at it. Anybody can get good at it. I don't think there should be any bar for entry, but it just is going to take time. Like you said, you need that patience. And that is one of the hardest things. I mean, we all struggled with that too. If we hadn't been meeting Saturdays, I don't know like if we would have made it through the boot camp either, because we were all struggling with that too, because we saw where, when you know where you want to be, it's really hard sometimes to like not want to rush to get there. Like you can envision that job or you can envision that future that you want, and then it gets really hard to kind of stay in the place that you're at.
Yeah, I have two things I want to comment here. So one is in the comments, Keith Elliott wrote, I feel like a lot of programmers in online communities have too much ego and act as if they learned everything at lightning speed and never have difficulty. When I was starting out, seeing that made me feel stupid. And I think more stuff like this needs to be put out there, and programmers should be more humble and admit it's not easy, or at least not fast. And I wanted to
Can I
address this
respond to
directly.
that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to. Okay,
I also
so
want to say something, but go ahead.
people
Yeah.
people who turn to computers to become programmers are generally, not everybody, but generally people who do not excel in dealing with people. And
Mhm.
so because I mean, oftentimes it's almost a revenge thing to treat everybody else as a loser because they're not a computer god, just because that's how this person who is good at computers felt in terms of realms of everything else dealing with people in school, friends, activities, physical stuff, all this different stuff. And so
Yeah.
you have to look at like who's becoming programmers. And unfortunately, that's a big issue because this is something that programmers run into all the time. And we've done whole discussions on soft skills because this is something that's
Yeah.
genuinely lacking among
Yeah.
programmers, just the ability to interact with people. But that's why you see it, and it happens all over the place. Yeah.
I think too, I was thinking about this the other day because you do see it a lot where skilled programmers act like assholes to anybody who's not at their level. And I
Yeah.
think part of it is too because it's one of those things, and we've talked about this before, where like people that don't do development just don't understand computer,
Yeah.
and they don't, and I get that they don't understand it. So like when you talk to clients and stuff, when you start doing freelance or you start working, like you'll find this out very quickly that they just don't have any clue how this stuff works. So
Yeah.
there is this like level of like it's almost like you have like occult knowledge in a weird
Mhm.
way, and I think that goes to people's heads where they're like, oh, they're idiots, like they think you could just put an edit button, and like we joke about that, but like it's the
Yeah.
truth, like. And I think that's part of it too, and you can get this kind of chip on your shoulder, like you're like this amazing person. When reality is, it's like, dude, you just program. Like it's a skill. It's not, it's like
Yeah.
anything else. Like,
Yeah.
I think computer people also have a god complex because like being able to create, like you do kind of have this god complex,
yeah,
but like even
Yeah.
that movie Hackers from, I don't know, what was it, like 1994 or something like that. They're like, oh yeah, the top three passwords are like God, sex, and love or something like
yeah,
that. And it's like, yeah, we just have a god complex. And like when you're God, you want to, doo-doo on everybody else for not being a god.
yeah.
Yeah. I have an interesting perspective on this because I've been thinking a lot about it. And I think I think all the things that you mentioned, both of you, are very true about senior developers and how, some of the reasons why they tend to like shit on junior developers. But I have this other theory too. Okay.
It's
So
frustration.
imagine that you're a senior developer, a quote unquote senior developer, because the other reality is a lot of these people aren't senior developers.
No.
They're probably mid-level developers at best, because every senior developer that I've ever been in contact with has been one of the most encouraging, positive people that I've ever met.
They're usually people that love computers,
Right.
love coding, and love talking about it. It's like running into
Exactly.
a
And are
faculty
like,
member who loves their discipline, right?
yeah,
Like,
like literally had conversations with senior developers when I was just starting out. And I was like, I just learned how to do an API. And they were like, amazing. That's great. Like, keep going. Right. They're not like, oh, you like worthless little junior, you
You
know?
just
yeah,
learned how to do an API? God.
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's usually like the people that you're hearing this from are usually mid to lower junior level. Like they're not really that amazing. Like,
Trying to
and
make
I
themselves
think,
seem better than they are. Yeah.
yeah, and I think what's happened is like years ago, like maybe 5 or 10 years ago, a lot of people could go to a university or to a boot camp and they could pretty much just get a job out of that. Like they could just apply to Google outside of like, hey, I just, finished school at wherever, and they'd get a job pretty easily because Google was like hiring everybody under the sun for to do nothing essentially, right?
They were in a competition they were just hiring to fight with other companies. They had nothing for them to
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
exactly. So all these people got hired and they took on roles that were like not very meaningful. They didn't do a lot. And then all of a sudden there was like huge tech layoffs and all these people now are sitting here like I can't find a job. I've been applying for everything and a lot of I think what they're realizing is you don't actually have a skill set. You just have a sheet of paper because you didn't continue learning. And so I think they are threatened by junior developers because especially self-taught ones because they're actually practicing and doing like the thing that you're supposed to do, which is like learn and like build things. I mean, you can think of us like construction workers in a way. Like if I was a construction worker but I never built anything, does that make me a good construction worker? It doesn't matter if I have the
Well, are
title.
you union?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to mention like one other thing before
Yeah.
I have you go, Danny, which is I had another conversation last week with somebody on an action call about he said, "What language should I learn to be sure that I don't get fired from a job?" Right? And so I thought it was a good question because it just shows you like the mindset of somebody who's coming into this field. And I want to make this an important point too, which is like this goes back to why is it bad? Why you should be bad at programming. You should be bad at programming because you're passionate about programming and you care about that, right? If your goal is to come into this field and just make money, you're not going to. You're going to struggle the whole way because you don't make money for a long time. But the payoff of the money you make when you get there is worth the struggle to get there. And so to like I answered his question for him, but I'll answer it for all of you, which is there is no language. There's no one language that's like, you know, job proof or, like you're going to be guaranteed a job. What I told him was the only thing that's
COBOL.
going to guarantee you a job is you continuing to practice and build things and actually like create because then you're increasing your skill set, right? Like if I have more skills, I'm more hireable at the end of the day, no matter what.
Well, that's what I like.
Rant over.
That's what drew me to tech, and that's what I like about it so much is that, it is all about continuous learning. And if you really are passionate about it and love it, the sky is literally the limit. There's so much you can do. There's so much you can be bad at. There's so much you can learn. There's so much to kind of like areas you can go into that are just like they all interest me. But the reality is like you gotta get good at one first, and then it's
Right.
easier to pick up the others. Because like we said it before too, like all these languages and stuff, they're all different, but they're all fundamentally doing the same thing, working on the same machines, the same hardware. So if you know one, you can learn others pretty easily. So it's just about starting somewhere, I think that's important too. And recognizing that like if you're getting into this field and you don't like continuous learning, continuous growth, then you're probably not in the right field, or you need to reassess what your goals are. Because I think like
Yeah.
I think like most of us, we got interested in this because we actually love it and like doing it. And that's a
Yeah.
very different approach to something. And it makes it a lot more enjoyable, I think, than just worrying about like say income or something, which is
Yeah.
also important. But like,
Totally. But I think if you're not the type of person who would be interested in like curious to actually solve problems and like build things without getting paid to do it, then you probably are not going to be a good software developer because your only incentive for ever doing any work or practice or building anything will be money. And nobody's going to pay you until they can see that you can build something on your own very well. So,
which does take time. It does take it takes
yeah,
you can definitely do it quick, but it takes time. Like,
yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Randall.
You guys were just talking about Google, and I heard something this week where someone was saying that, like Google has a very high turnover rate of employees. And it's not
Yeah,
because the work environment is bad. Like we've all seen how cool it would appear to
yeah,
work there. You can like play games whenever you want, all the free food, whatever. But the problem is that the deadlines are so tight that you just don't have time to enjoy everything with your work. So I kind of see the parallel between that and also being a bad programmer, because when people quit when they're a bad programmer, it's because the time frame they've given themselves, the deadline for learning
Mm,
programming, is too short. And so on a long enough time frame, you can learn anything.
yeah.
But the problem is when you have a short time frame or you have too much material to learn, well, it's just not going to fit. So giving yourself a longer time frame to learn it can definitely
Which
be helpful.
which
That's
given that
also,
fact makes it crazy that like boot camps are what they are
I was
because
just gonna say that, yeah, because like, dude,
they're exactly that.
every month there's
Learn
something,
everything on a
yeah,
short time frame.
every month
The
is a new
exact
language,
opposite.
a new thing, yeah, which you can't do. You don't
Yeah,
process anything. And so it's like you're just there for whatever, and people, they don't also, the problem with boot camps is they don't also inform people of how much.
oh, we lost
I
you,
remember our
Danny.
boot camp was like, oh, all you need is, oh,
No, you're
Oh,
there. You're
you're
okay,
back. You're
okay.
back.
Oh, okay. Like I remember our
just
boot camp was
froze
like,
for a
all you
minute.
need is like an hour or two a day. And it's like, no, you don't. You
Yeah,
need like 8 hours a
if you're
day
gonna
to do
copy and
this.
paste this, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
Hmm.
best thing about a boot camp is just that you get general high level exposure to a bunch of different things so that at least when somebody says it in a room, you can be like, I understand what that means, but I don't
I
know
know
how to
that. I
do
know what
it.
that word is. Yeah.
It gives
Yeah,
you exposure so you can know all the things that you know nothing about.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, Bryce made a great point too, because he said there's so many directions you can go. Obviously, data science, ML, AI, web development, blah, blah, blah. He says they each have their own languages, but several
Yeah.
languages, right? They also have their own frameworks, packages. And I think this is the other thing. You have to be able to learn, right? Because learning new stuff is going to be essential if you work for an employer. They're going to like all of a sudden they might decide that they're going to change to this framework. And guess what? You're going to have to learn it or you're not going to keep your job. And that's just
Exactly.
the reality. So like you
And
have to be flexible.
that's the what I was trying to get with this gentleman who I was talking to about when he asked what languages he needed to learn. It's not about like a particular language. I mean, I could tell you any language that you choose if you get good enough at it,
You'll find work.
you're
You
going to
will.
find
Yeah.
work. Like it doesn't matter. But ultimately, the best thing that you can do is like I talk about this a lot is that learning in a lot of other fields, I think, is sort of like a straight line sort of thing. Like you think about mathematics, you have to understand like basic addition before you can go on to like more advanced things, right? Whereas in computer science, it's more of like a web. You learn about one thing, and then from there, there's like two other things and five other things and 20 other things that you can learn. And then all of a sudden, you're just like in the thick of it, and everything you see touches the knowledge that you
Well, it's
have
all
in some
connected,
way.
right?
Yeah,
And yeah,
exactly.
once you start recognizing that too, I think it makes it a lot easier and more fun. And I
Yeah,
will say personally, like I did like web development's nice early on too, because you can create and see your creation very easily. And I do think
yeah,
that's very helpful for learning. You can
yes,
actually see what's happening in real time with your code. Where a
yeah.
lot of other
That's
stuff you can't, you have to like, build it and see and all. And plus everything's built with web apps now. So it's like also,
yeah. It
yeah.
just makes tons of sense. Go ahead, Randall. Were you going to say
Oh,
something?
well, when you mentioned it again, like what's the one language you can learn so that you don't lose
COBOL.
your job? I was yeah, COBOL. No, I was actually
The
thinking
government's always looking for that.
Yeah,
probably the answer to that is your native spoken language. Like the only thing that you can do that would have the best chance of not getting fired is to learn soft skills as much as possible, like how to
yeah,
communicate with people, how to interact with people. Because every time I've heard of programmers getting fired, other than just like mass layoffs, it's because they completely lack social skills.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that is true, dude. You need to develop it's especially if you're gonna do freelance and stuff, you need to develop well-rounded skills in general. Like it can't just be one thing. We actually had a
Visual Basic.
yeah, we had a question too. It said code bases which use classes for functions. Why don't we just use functional components, not classes? This is just about it's about levels of abstraction actually and different methods for programming. So there are different ways of doing programming. There's some where it's more function driven, some's more class driven. It depends on the style of programming, the language, and also just the approach that's being taken. But classes can be a great way to abstract and kind of break up code bases, especially when you're doing like regular software development. Classes can be wildly important and useful.
Yeah. It ultimately like the functional components that I think he's talking about in React and things like that, they are ultimately classes. They're just written that way as it's more readable and easy for developers to work on. but
To write them basically as functions, yeah, but they are.
yeah, but like they're compiled down into that anyway.
Yeah.
So
So let's say that somebody is interested in getting this experience we're talking about earlier with our coaching program, where they can literally start doing what real web developers do almost immediately, even with minimal knowledge of like HTML and CSS. How would they go about doing that? How do we get one of those action calls that you were talking about?
well, I mean, I guess they could write bad programming in the comments
That'd be good.
and we'll reach out to them. I think there was somebody on here, Tristan, I think maybe
Yeah, had
was
asked
interested
to.
in getting a call. So Tristan will definitely reach out to you for a call. But if you guys just put like programming in the comments, like write it all in big bold letters, we'll reach out to you, or just ping us inside the Facebook group. We're always available to answer questions.
There
And
is also in that one post too, I think, about the action post in our thing, there's actually a link you can just set one up to.
yeah,
It's
And
one
we'll
of the
see
pinned
that.
posts.
Yeah, it's one of the pin posts.
yeah. And yeah, this is not a boot camp. What we offer is not a boot camp. It's a coaching program. It's, not like the boot camp before the football season. It's actually coaching during the football season. So we play real games, we build real projects. We answer questions and help you with whatever it is that you're working on. So if you're doing a Udemy course or you're doing self-learning through Code Academy or Odin Project or free code camp, like the idea here is we're not charging you for any of the content because it's all out there for free. We help you point you in the direction of like the best content that we know of, and you get to share that with the community, like where you've learned these things. Like this week, I know Mary was working on like Flexbox, and a lot of the people inside the program have found certain things like Flexbox, Froggy, and like different games helpful, right? And so we help you with things like that, where it's like, hey, you're not going to get that help from being in a boot camp or from taking a Udemy course. There's nobody there to answer your questions. So that's what it's about. It's about answering your questions, being there for you when you need that push of motivation or that accountability of like, I didn't really get that much done this week. And if you want to learn the modern frameworks that are going to actually end up landing you a job, like I know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like vanilla, they're great, but they're not going to land you a job, right? You need to learn frameworks and things like that. And so that's what we do is we actually build these projects with everybody in the group and teach you the framework. So
The other thing too, I think that's crucial that we never learn in boot camp too, is you get to see, because you build projects with us from scratch, you get to see how to actually build a project
yeah,
from start to finish, how to deploy it, how to do everything. And that's something you'll never
Using
get in a
GitHub
boot
to
camp.
interact with other people.
Yeah,
yeah.
you'll
And
never get that in a
I
boot
think
camp
what's
or
also
college.
important too is like
Like,
it's not just a polished project that
no.
you're going through it and we've already made it perfect. We're building it together. So you're seeing like the actual logic, the thoughtfulness that goes into like, how do I take an idea and turn that into reality?
Which is like the
Not
best
just
part
like
about it, you
copy and
know?
paste code. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you get the real experience that you need to find a job. So if you're interested, just reach out to us. We can set up a little action call, and it's just like a 30-minute call where we discuss your goals and what you're interested in doing. Help guide you a little bit. And if you're interested in the web dev incubator, then we'll talk to you a little bit about that as well. But with that, I think that's our episode.
We're out of
today.
time.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
out of time. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you. Oh yeah, Bryce says there's 24/7 help with a private Telegram, which is awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. I love to see people in there. Like every day I get so many messages from you
So
guys.
Bryce can say
Cool.
private group, but I can't say private group.
I mean, I know you guys love sharing your privates inside the Telegram group, but that's a different group. Randall and Bryce have a separate group, just the two of them.
right.
Anyway, love you guys. Take the rest of the day and enjoy your Saturday. If you are inside the incubator, we'll see you in about 30 minutes for our accountability and motivation call and our code reviews. So if you guys have any code to review, any components that you've been building or anything like that, I'm excited to see what everybody has.
Nice.
Show off some of my own because I've been working on some of that stuff too. So cool.
All right.
All right. Enjoy your
right.
Saturday. Peace out, everybody. See you.
Peace.